so close in Iowa last night that 6 different precincts had to flip a coin to decide.
Well, so.
It was dead even, and they had to flip a coin. So I guess money really does influence politics. And how did Hillary manage to win all 6 of those? I mean, I don't want to cry foul or anything, but I heard some of those coins might have worked for her campaign in 2008. But how about that? When they first started polling in Iowa, nobody had any clue who Bernie Sanders even was. And then thanks to the hard work of people like you guys, who are out there organizing, volunteering, phone banking, your donations, Bernie was able to tie the Clinton political machine in Iowa last night. And that is huge. So that just goes to show you how far this political revolution has really come. Bernie Sanders went from polling at about 4% in Iowa to tying Hillary Clinton, which is absolutely enormous. But this political revolution isn't just about Bernie Sanders. What we need to be doing is organizing so we can elect progressive candidates to every level of government. And that includes local levels right here in Denver, where we can have a really big impact. And tonight, we are lucky enough to have 2 such progressive candidates here. We have Mike Carrigan. All right. He is running for Denver DA. And we have Jack Kroll, who is running for CU Regent. Give it up. So may I introduce to you, Mike Carrigan.
You know, democracy is a funny thing. Because on one hand, everyone's talking about president, and we should, because it's so vital. But as you just heard, there's local elections that are so important to your life and to the life of somebody around you. And my name is Mike Carrigan, and I'm running to be Denver's next district attorney. And I'm doing that because I believe our criminal justice system has to change. Our criminal justice system is not one we can be proud of. Our criminal justice system locks up too many minorities, too many kids, and doesn't keep us safer. And I'm running as the only candidate who has been both a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney. And that will bring a balanced perspective to the Denver District Attorney's Office, an office that has been run by insiders for the last 40 years. Insiders that are not out in our community. Insiders who many people think are too close to law enforcement and not speaking with the voice of the community. So, as your next Denver District Attorney, I'm going to focus on a couple of things. 1, juvenile justice. We have to stop the school to jail pipeline. We have to stop criminalizing what is inside school misbehavior. We also have to make sure that when people use guns in crimes, they are put down like a hammer, because guns are a serious threat to our entire community. And I honor and I respect all the men and women who put on the badge and go out and protect all of us. But I know that their job is made harder when those who violate the public's trust are not held accountable. And when officers in Denver, if they use excessive force and they violate people's rights, I will prosecute them. But there's another issue, and this is a very important issue that distinguishes me from the other people running for this office. We live in 21st century America. America we want to be proud of. America that we want the whole country, the whole world to look at and look up to. And in that America, we have to stop using the death penalty. And I am the only candidate who is 100% against the death penalty. Because not only do I want to see it repealed, you have my pledge that if I am elected as your DA, the death penalty is off the table. I will not try to kill one of our own citizens in your name. So here's how I need your help. When you go to caucus on March 1st, you'll be taking a vote not only on president, but also on district attorney. I need you to please not only vote for me, but stand up and tell others about Carrigan's commitment to changing our criminal justice system. And with your support, we can make sure Denver is a national leader in criminal justice, because that's a city we can all be proud of. Now, before I woke up our next speaker, I do want to make sure, if you haven't seen already, Eric Silverstein's with me here tonight. If you live in Denver, we're having an event next week, just an open house to talk about our campaign. Would really be honored if you come by. If not, please take the information about our campaign and why we're running. Another way I've been serving Denver for the last 11 years is serving as your elected CU Regent. And Colorado is different in that respect, in that you have a voice on who runs Colorado's flagship university. It's not because somebody gave a bunch of money to the governor's campaign. You get elect who runs your flagship university. And I've been honored to be your voice for diversity and accessibility for the last 11 years. And there's a tight race to replace me. And I'm proud to introduce a fantastic candidate who's running for that spot, Jack Kroll. Jack, I got to know Jack as a student leader when he was student body president of the entire 4-campus, 50,000 CU student body. And he was an effective, passionate advocate for student rights. And I know if elected, he will be a terrific CU Regent. Jack, welcome.
All right, let's give it up one more time for Denver's next district attorney, Michael Carrigan. So, it's cold as heck outside, but I am so excited to be in here feeling the burn. Who's with me? Yes. So, higher education is vitally important, and I came out here tonight to tell you all why I deserve and why I need your support to be your next regent. You know, there was a bunch of other events tonight. We had a small donor committee meeting for NARAL pro-choice. We had a House District 6 meeting, and guess what? Both of them got canceled because of the snow. But if I knew there was going to be one event that through all the snow was going to be going on, it was going to be right here at the Oriental Theater with the Bernie support, right? You guys know what democracy looks like. It's trudging through 7 inches of snow, driving across town to show up and show your support. Now, I became a big fan of Bernie Sanders when he announced his plan to tax Wall Street and use that money to fund higher education in our country. Because if you're like me and you went to school in the last 10 years, the last 20 years, the last 5 years, or you're in school right now, you probably have a lot of student debt. Am I right? Yeah. Student debt is not cool. And I've seen how student debt can impact the lives of others firsthand. Now, what I do for a living, I work in the Office of Admissions on the Boulder campus. I'm on the ground every single day recruiting students to go to college. And I've seen how we've built an educational system in our country that can oftentimes disenfranchise those from the middle and lower income and advance the advantaged class and the wealthiest 1%. Let me give you an example. And I'm going to pick on TC, because when I'm done here, TC is going to come up and chat with you all for a bit. But let's say TC and I go to CU. We both studied business at CU. We both graduate with a great degree. We both get a good job that pays us the exact same salary. But you see, TC wasn't fortunate enough, like I was, to have my parents pay my way through college. TC had to borrow money to go to school. And so 5 years down the road, I'm taking my paycheck and I'm putting $500 a month towards building wealth, investing in a new home, maybe investing in the stock market, while TC is taking that same $500 and paying off his student loan debt. So how can we ever expect our educational institutions to live up to that reputation of being the great equalizer in our country when we're graduating students with tens of thousands of dollars in crushing student loan debt? Right? We've got to do more to make sure that students can graduate with a college degree in this country and get ahead. Another good example, we spend a lot of money at the university going out and recruiting very wealthy students from across the globe to pay $60,000 a year in tuition. Can you believe that? $60,000 at a public university. Our students right here in our backyard pay $30,000 in tuition, well, in total cost of attendance each year. That's not right. Right? We cannot be a university that caters to the wealthiest 1%. We must be a university that caters to the other 99% so that students can get a good education and they can get ahead in life. So here's how I need your support. Just like with Michael, we're going to go to caucus on March 1st. You're going to be in your precincts. It would be great if you can stand up and tell your fellow hardcore Democrats that they need to vote for Jack because he's a progressive candidate. He understands that student loan debt only keeps the middle class and lower class down while advantaging the wealthiest 1%. And tell your friends one simple thing: to roll with Kroll. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. If you like, please check out our website, KrollForColorado.com, or as my older brother calls it, because every older brother is good at picking on you, he calls it the KFC website, KrollForColorado.com. My average donation is not $27. It's a lot less, so if you can think to even donate a few dollars, it would mean a lot to me. Thanks so much for your time. I'm going to bring up TC Bell now and feel the burn, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Michael. That's the political revolution right there, folks. And that's what Bernie Sanders is talking about every single day, day in and day out on this campaign trail. If you really, really, really listen to every single speech that he gives, there's this little portion where he talks about, hey, even if you elect me the president, I'm not going to solve all these problems. And he's right. Because currently, the Tea Party, the extreme right wing, controls the legislative branch of this country's federal government. So if we made Bernie Sanders the president today, but didn't change one congressperson, one senator, none of these amazing things that Bernie Sanders is setting out to accomplish will get done. And so that's why it's important we have people like Michael, we have people like Jack, we have people hopefully like you that are going to stand up over the next few years and say, you know what, I may not be a millionaire, I might not be a lawyer myself, but I think I have a vision for where this country needs to go, and I think I know a lot of people around me that can support me and share their vision of a future with me, and I can represent them, no matter if it's at the level of a state house representative, a school board member, even like a sheriff. We need people with progressive values and a progressive vision for this country stepping up and taking that risk, putting themselves out there on the line like Jack and Michael just did in front of you guys, and saying, hey, I want to be your leaders. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about a short-term plan of making Bernie Sanders the next president. Then we're going to talk about a more long-term plan of actually giving President Sanders a successful 4-8 years in the White House. So, first off, thank you all so much for coming out, because, man, there's a whole bunch of snow out there, and you guys took the time to come out. So, seriously, give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much, because I see a lot of faces out there that are familiar. We've been doing this whole little thing since July of last year with my buddy Robert over here. I met my friend Zach, who talked to you guys at the beginning. I met him back in June when Bernie came to DU. So some people have been doing this work for a long time. And if you're just getting involved, that's totally fine, because we still need every single person Every minute is going to count that you can dedicate to Bernie Sanders. So I'm going to tell you what you can do to help ensure that Bernie wins here on March 1st. Because here in Colorado, we don't have a presidential primary. We do the same process that you saw on TV last night in Iowa. We do what's called a caucus system. What makes our system different from Iowa is ours is a closed caucus system. In Iowa last night, you could walk up to the polls at 6:30, 6:45, and you could have been a registered Republican, a registered Green Party member. You could have been completely unaffiliated to vote with a party, and you could have gone to the caucus last night, registered as a Democrat before you walked in the room, and then caucus for Bernie Sanders. Here in Colorado, you can't do that. Unless you are a registered Democrat by January 1st, 2016, then you will not be able to caucus for Bernie Sanders, which is unfortunate. Because here in the state of Colorado, we are evenly divided between Republicans, Democrats, and unaffiliated voters. It's about a third for each. So right off at the top, a third of the entire electorate, the state of Colorado, has been disenfranchised from picking who the next president of the United States is going to be. That's not very democratic in my eyes. Now we have to consider so many people have never even heard about a caucus or know how to participate in a caucus. So you might be a registered Democrat, but you're just not informed. So right there, you've just been disenfranchised from participating. Because the thing about a caucus is, it's a meeting that you have to physically be present at to have your voice heard. And again, this is another rule specific to Colorado, because in other caucus states, say you're scheduled to work on caucus night, you can actually send a proxy there to vote for you. You can send in an absentee vote in other caucus states, not in the state of Colorado. You have to physically be present in the room. And if you're not in line before 7 p.m., because at 7 p.m. on March 1st, they're just going to close the doors. And if you haven't gotten in line before 7 p.m., they're going to close the door right in your face. And you could have done all those steps, become a registered Democrat before January 1st, found out where your caucus location is, got in there, it's 7:01, and they're going to shut the door right on your face. So we're telling people, please, on March 1st, do your best to get there early, set 6:15, 6:30, almost at the latest. Because go back, watch some YouTube videos tonight, and just type in Iowa Caucus 2016 and look at the madness that took place there, okay? There's a lot of enthusiasm when you have an election like this where there's not an incumbent. We saw the same thing in 2008, and the same thing's gonna happen this year in Colorado. I heard a Democratic Party official saying 120,000 people caucused in Colorado in 2008. We're expecting 117,000 this year. That's kind of crazy because, just in case you haven't noticed, a lot of people have been moving to Colorado the last few years, right? So they're expecting less people to participate, even though more people are living here, and there's almost more excitement around this race. So what I'm trying to tell people to do is, let's get out there. Let's flood the caucus for Bernie Sanders, and if these people are expecting 117,000 people total to show up, I want 100,000 Bernie Sanders supporters to show up, okay? Because the only way we're going to win is if we get 100,000 Bernie Sanders people mobilized across the state of Colorado to go to their caucus. Because the way the caucus is run, it's pretty fair on the Democratic side. I gotta just put this out there to let you guys know. I was not a registered Democrat until January 22nd, 2015. 2 days after Bernie Sanders came to DU and gave this amazing speech, they had rented a gymnasium that fits 3,000 people and 5,000 people showed up in June in Colorado, right? And so I saw that something is really happening here. We can really do this. And as a former Republican that's caucused for Ron Paul in 2008, I know the steps that we as volunteers and activists have to take if we actually want to see our candidate get the nomination. So I switched my party affiliation, and I just gotta put this out there. In 2008, I did this whole thing for Ron Paul. I was volunteering, registering people to vote, trying my damnedest to get people to register as Republicans, which is extremely difficult to do. And caucus for Ron Paul, and we got through the whole process, and the Republican Party as a whole completely stonewalled us activists and volunteers. And so me being like 20 years old at the time, I was just like, oh, okay, well, you guys stonewalled us, well then I'm out. I'm done with politics as a whole. I see how it's done. It's an insider's game, and people like us can never get ahead. So I completely abandoned electoral politics, and I was active for about 4 years, telling my friends to not register to vote. In 2012, I actually went to the polls and wrote in nobody for president. Because I told people, I said, nobody's gonna stop the wars, nobody's gonna help the poor, nobody's gonna prosecute Wall Street, nobody cares, and nobody listens, so vote for nobody, right? This year, I didn't have to do that, because there's this amazing man with a consistent record of decades being in the public eye, saying and doing the exact same thing. And I could see that I didn't have to do the same thing this year. I could actually find a candidate that I could believe in, that is actually offering hope for my two daughters' future. And so I said, all right, I'm gonna get involved in politics again. I did something I thought I would never have to do, and that was register as a Democrat. And you know what? My skin didn't melt off. I was amazed. But I realized that it's because of people like myself over the last 8 years. We've withdrawn from the political process so much, and we've become so apathetic that that void and that vacuum that we left was filled. And it was filled by right-wing extremists who elected a Tea Party Congress, who vote almost every single day to repeal Obamacare and replace it with nothing, okay? These people are this close from winning the White House. And we already saw what happens when the Republican Party controls the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate, and is allowed to name Supreme Court nominees. That's called the Bush years. And in case none of you remember too much, the Bush years weren't too great for the economy. They weren't too great for working class people like myself, and they certainly weren't too great for the future of young people in this country like my daughters. So what we have right now is a very small opportunity with Bernie Sanders' campaign. We, the people, have an opportunity to kick the door down and take a seat at the table. It's something that Bernie and Elizabeth Warren talk about all the time, is the fact that our economy is rigged. It's rigged because the lobbyists that these multinational corporations pay to be at the table every single day in Washington outnumber you and I. You and I are working our butts off just to get by, just to survive, just to feed our families. So we don't have people sitting down across the table from Marco Rubio every single day defending what we need. While the Koch brothers, they certainly do, okay? So it's time that you and I come together and we bring about Bernie Sanders' political revolution that this campaign is truly about. This is not about electing Bernie Sanders as president. Bernie Sanders, making him the president, is the catalyst. And that's the lightning rod that's going to make this movement happen a lot quicker. But even if Bernie Sanders does not become the Democratic nominee, and even if he does and he doesn't become the next president, I don't want you guys to give up. Because there's going to be people like Mike Carrigan, there's going to be people like Jack Kroll that are going to be running at every single level of government, and they need your support. Even if you don't live in their district, they're going to need you out there knocking doors for them so that people that live in their district know about them and their values. So in the long run, what Bernie Sanders is calling for all of us to do is get in a long-term battle Because right now, there's a class war being waged on the middle class, on the poorest people in our society, and it's being waged by the richest people in our society, and they're really effective at what they're doing. And they've been doing it for decades. And they're so good at doing it that they have a whole bunch of working class people whose policies like Bernie Sanders would support and whose lives would be better because of those policies, actively go to the polls and vote for people like Ted Cruz, vote for people like Donald Trump, because the Republican Party, the Tea Party, the extreme right wing is really, 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 really good at what they do. So we gotta just be better. And it helps that they got all the money in the world financing them. It definitely helps. And that's a disadvantage that we're gonna have. But Bernie Sanders' campaign has proven, January, he just raised $20 million in 1 month. And that's because of people like you donating to this campaign in small incremental amounts. But we're doing it together as a mass movement. And this campaign is gonna have to transform itself at some stage from just a presidential campaign that's looking to elect Bernie Sanders into a mass movement that's sustainable in the long term. Noam Chomsky is one of my favorite intellectuals, and if you listen to a Noam Chomsky speech, at the end of every single speech, somebody will stand up and be like, wow, I just read one of your books, or I just heard your speech tonight, the world's falling apart at the seams, what can I do to save the world? And Noam Chomsky will just look at that person and say, well, there's plenty for you to do. Next question. And he's absolutely right, because there is plenty for us to do. There's lots of different issues that we can organize around. But recently, somebody put a camera right in front of Noam Chomsky and they said, what's the best thing somebody can do to save the world in 2015, 2016? And he said they can organize for Bernie Sanders. Which is amazing, and he said that, right? But then he qualified that statement. He said, what Bernie Sanders is doing is incredible. He's organizing millions of people. He's saying some very brave things, but the whole movement's gonna fall apart. Unless all those people that he's organizing ignore the sideshow of presidential elections every 4 years and the sideshow of congressional elections every 2 years. And if these people can stay organized around issues and not around elections, then we have the potential to affect long-term change in a massive. This is what a direct quote from Noam Chomsky. So he's right. And what I like to say is look to the Tea Party, people. What we're trying to do in the short term is take a page out of the Barack Obama 2008 campaign book and beat Hillary Clinton. And we're gonna do that. We are doing that. But in the long term, we have to take a playbook from the Tea Party. And we have to apply that to the progressive movement. And we have to start saying to the Democratic Party, okay, we're not just going to be held hostage anymore. We're not just going to say, let you guys put up your corporatist Democrat, and then you say, oh, well, if you don't vote for him, the Republican is going to get elected. Well, when the Democrat from Colorado who sits in the Senate votes for Keystone XL, votes to let TPP come out of committee, and then votes for fast track, I really don't see a difference, even though he has a D behind his name. That's Michael Bennet, just in case you didn't realize. So you have people like Michael Bennet, who he's up for re-election this year. He just voted for fast track. He just voted for TPP, and there's nobody in the Democratic Party challenging him. Nobody. And we're all just gonna go to the polls next November, and when we vote for Bernie Sanders, who's going to be this amazing progressive president, we're all going to have to vote for Michael Bennet, who will probably most likely vote against a lot of the things that Bernie Sanders is going to send right to Michael Bennet's table. We, as progressives, don't have to stand for that. And the Tea Party certainly doesn't stand for that. So what we need to do is we need to start finding progressives all across the state of Colorado at every level of government, not just to challenge Michael Bennet, but to take back the school boards from the Koch brothers, to take over sheriff's offices, to take over city councils, to take back the mayor's office from Michael Hancock so he can stop selling our city to the highest bidder. Okay? These people call themselves Democrats, and that's fine and haven't noticed, for the last 35 years, the Democratic Party has been trending rightward. And the reason you have this trend towards the right is because a lot of Democrats are just scared to be called names by Republicans. There's a woman, her name's Claire McClaskill, she's a senator from Missouri, and she talked about how the Republicans can't wait to run an ad with a hammer and sickle against Bernie Sanders. You know what? Who cares if they run an ad with the hammer and sickle? Because it doesn't apply. It's not 1980 anymore, it's 2016. And the people who are the biggest voting bloc in this year's election are millennials. And we didn't grow up in the Cold War. And your Cold War scare tactics don't apply and they don't work anymore, okay? So, Claire McClaskill, please move out of the way because we progressives are here to take your jobs. We can't just be focused on taking the Republicans' jobs. We have to take the jobs from these Democrats who enable these Republicans. These Democrats who in 2010, when they had the perfect opportunity to give us a single-payer healthcare system, said, we can never get that done, we're going to vote against that. There's a reason why we don't have single-payer today. It's because Democrats said they couldn't get it done. So, on March 1st, 2016, what I want all of you guys to do, the people that are Democrats in the room, the people that aren't, unfortunately, you can still help people get to the caucus. Because we're going to need people to carpool, we're going to need people supporting elderly people, younger people that don't have access. So you can still contribute. But everyone that's a registered Democrat that's in the room right now, I need you to go to your caucus on March 1st. And you're going to stand up, and this is going to be your first opportunity to vote for Bernie Sanders, and it's the most important one. Because so many people don't participate in the caucus process, the few people that take the time and the energy to come out, their voices are amplified. Their voices are amplified 10-fold, 20-fold, 50-fold, just depending on the turnout, right? And so as a former Republican in the city and county of Denver, you would go up to your caucus location, and there would be certain precincts where there was nobody there. Nobody shows up. So this is why the Tea Party is able to take over an entire party, the Republican Party, because most people don't participate. And the people who do participate are extremists, and they're crazy. And it's their voice who gets heard. So we can take that example, and we can start participating ourselves. But we also have to get involved with the party at every single level. So every single month, most House districts have these local Democratic meetings. I live in House District 2 in Denver, and we have a meeting every third Saturday at the Washington Street Community Center. And so it's really important that progressives like myself take the time to come out to those meetings, because it's at those meetings where candidates like Michael and Jack, they're gonna come out and they're gonna introduce themselves and they're gonna get up there and talk, and you'll get all the different candidates talking. And you can really hear these people, see where they stand on an issue. You can walk right up to them after they're done. You can ask them questions. You can see if they're really there and they're talking the talk and walking the walk, or if they're just saying things that they want you to hear so that you vote for them. So when they get power, they can just turn their backs on you completely. So get involved with the party at the most local level. But more importantly, I need you guys to caucus on March 1st. And this is the part that kind of gets really hard, is I need you to bring a whole bunch of people to the caucus with you. Because how the delegates are determined, it's all based on the percentage of the vote that your candidate receives on caucus night. In order to get any delegates at all, your candidate has to receive 15% of the vote. So what we're trying to tell people to do is flood the caucus with Bernie Sanders supporters so that we get 86% of the vote. Because if we get 86% of the vote, then none of the other candidates, well, since there's only one candidate now, we can say her name. So that Hillary Clinton doesn't get any other delegates. Because this is how it's broken down, people. In the state of Colorado, on caucus night, basically 64 delegates are going to be up for grabs, plus 5 alternates. There are also 13 super delegates that are going to go to the national convention from the state of Colorado. Super delegates, Governor Hickenlooper, Senator Michael Bennett, Representative DeGette, Representative Perlmutter, Representative Jared Polis. Then those remaining 8 superdelegates are quote-unquote distinguished party leaders. These people are the establishment of the Democratic Party, and they're all in Hillary Clinton's pocket right now, all of them. Every single one of the superdelegates basically has come out for Hillary Clinton, and they came out almost last year, before this race even began, because these people are smart, they're politicians, and no politician is going to cross Hillary Clinton's quest for the White House. That's why when Elizabeth Warren was asked for a year and a half, are you going to run for president, Elizabeth Warren? Elizabeth Warren's smart enough to go, no, not this year. But see, we're lucky because Bernie Sanders is crazy, right? So Bernie Sanders is willing to challenge Hillary Clinton, thank God. But the thing is most politicians aren't as crazy as Bernie Sanders. And so until they see that the actual political winds are shifting, and that they can keep their jobs while going along with those shifting winds, because that's what's more important to them, is keeping their jobs. That's all they care about, right? Just like you. Just like me, I can't blame them. I want to keep my job. I want to be able to provide for my kids. So I can't blame them. They want to keep their job. So all of those superdelegates are in Hillary Clinton's pocket. In September, Hillary Clinton's camp released a news story saying, we have 20% of the delegates that we need to win the nomination. That's months before anyone voted in the primary, months before any caucuses took place, but they're absolutely right. Because they have all these superdelegates pledged to her camp. And that's why it's crucial. It is so utterly important that on March 1st, here in the state of Colorado, we win all of the delegates that are available for us. Not some of them, not half of them like they did in Iowa last night, but all of them. And it might seem daunting, 86% of the vote. Oh my gosh, TC, you sound like a lunatic. Well, my friend Sven says it best. He says, we're going to aim for the stars and hopefully land on the moon, right? Barack Obama got 66% of the vote on Super Tuesday in 2008 here in Colorado. All we have to do is bump that up 20%. Barack Obama got 38% of the vote in Iowa and won last in 2008. Bernie Sanders just got 49. So they bumped it up over there. I think we can bump it up. I think we can do it. What do you guys think? Can we do it?
Yes!
How are we going to do it? That's the next thing. That's what we talk about here. We talk about canvassing. The biggest way that you're going to get people to come and caucus with you is get out there, spend a couple hours a week for the next 4 weeks, because all we have is 4 weeks until the March 1st caucus. So if you can spend 2 hours a week at the minimum, 2 hours a day, oh boy, you're going to be Jordan's favorite person if you can spend 2 hours a day volunteering for Bernie Sanders. But if you can just spend 2 hours a week volunteering for Bernie, walking around your neighborhood, talking to your neighbors. I know it's frightening. Do you hear the silence in this room? You hear a needle drum. It's frightening having to talk to complete strangers that live near you. I know. Fortunately, because of the rules, you only have to talk to Democrats. So you don't have to worry about somebody answering the door, screaming at you and calling you a communist and then telling you how much they love Donald Trump. We did all that work earlier. You don't have to worry about that anymore. So you'll get a list from a volunteer leader that's in your house district. They'll give you a list of just Democrats, maybe like 60 doors that you can spend 2 hours walking around the streets. You'll get it printed off, you'll know their name, you'll know their age, you'll know their sex, and you'll just walk up to them. Knock on their door and say, hello, my name's TC Bell, I live in your neighborhood. I like to tell them where specifically I live, so they actually know that I live in their neighborhood. Hello, my name's TC Bell, I live in your neighborhood, and I'm a volunteer for Bernie Sanders. And I'm just here talking to people about the March 1st caucus. I'm seeing if you support Bernie Sanders, and if you plan on going to the caucus on March 1st. And you know what I found when I'm out there canvassing? Is everybody likes Bernie Sanders. Everybody likes Bernie Sanders. I talked to 20 people the other day, and one person said they liked Hillary Clinton. And then when I said, are you gonna go to the caucus on March 1st? They were like, no. I was like, you're my favorite person ever. I love you. Those people actually, I like them more than the Bernie Sanders people who say they're gonna go to caucus. The Hillary people that don't want to go to caucus, God, I love those people. But what you're gonna find is when you're out there and you're knocking doors, everybody loves Bernie Sanders, but at the same time, those same people that love Bernie Sanders don't know that they have to go to caucus for him. So that's why you are out there. You're here today so you can learn this information. Now you're gonna go out to your neighbors, and you're gonna knock on their doors, and you're gonna say, hey, you like Bernie Sanders? Well, I need you to come out with me on March 1st to the caucus. It's gonna be at this little rec center or this middle school or this high school that's in our neighborhood. And hey, if you need a ride, I can carpool you, or one of my neighbors can carpool you. We're all for Bernie Sanders. And I just need you to show up. Because when we get to the caucus on March 1st, you saw it last night. Go home and watch the YouTube videos. It's madness. It's pure madness. They're going to use like a gymnasium, or like I said, like a high school or a middle school. And when they use these middle schools, basically, I'm going to take it back a step. How it's all organized. In the state of Colorado, we have 64 House districts. Your House district has a representative that represents you at the state House, down there in Colfax and Broadway. And they write all of the laws for the state of Colorado, okay? In each House district, you have about the average of 50 precincts that make up each House district. Your precinct is essentially just your neighborhood. That's all it is. Maybe like 10 to 12 blocks at the most. So these are very manageable chunks that you'll be able to walk your entire precinct and talk to all the Democrats that live in your precinct, maybe in 2 or 3 shifts of 2 hours. So it's really manageable. What's gonna happen on caucus night is they're gonna break up, they'll like use a middle school for a portion of a House district. So inside of that middle school, you might have 25 or 30 classrooms. Each one of those classrooms represents an individual precinct. So you might have a friend that lives in House District 2 with you, but they live in a different precinct. So you'll both show up to the same middle school, but then once you do your sign-in registration, you'll each go to a different classroom. And the classroom that you go into will only have Democrats that are your neighbors. And one of the first things we're going to do after we call the meeting to order is we're going to select somebody to run the meeting. They're basically going to be the president of just this little meeting. And then we're going to select somebody that's going to be the secretary of this little meeting, that's going to take all the notes down and make everything official. What I've been telling people is, if you have never caucused before, and this is a whole new process for you and you're a Bernie Sanders person, I need you to stand up and say, I want to run the meeting. I want to be the secretary for the meeting. That way, you don't have somebody else that isn't a Bernie Sanders person stepping up, that's really experienced in this process, standing up and literally running circles around you guys. Because I've seen it done before, and it's not fun to be on the receiving end of somebody implementing Robert's Rules of Order, and then you have no idea what they're talking about, and then the meeting's over in like 7 minutes, and you're like, did I just vote for the person I came to vote for? I'm kind of confused. That can happen, so don't let that happen. After we elect the person, and that's the thing, is in the rules for the party, it doesn't really say how the person that is going to be the president of this meeting is selected. So you can elect them, or, and this is most likely what's going to happen, is that person is going to stand up and say, I want to run the meeting. And everyone else in the room is going to kind of just go, okay, let him do it, because I don't want to do it. That's what you're going to find. These people are going to take the time to come out, but nobody wants to stand up and lead. So I need you, Bernie Sanders people, to be the leaders. Because they'll just let you lead if you do it. Trust me, every time. No one is going to question you. No one is going to be like, I don't know who you are. You're not a real Democrat. Robert, you used to be a Green Party member. TC, you used to be a Republican. I'm not going to let you run this meeting. No one's going to do that because nobody wants to run the meeting themselves. And that's why we have the government we have, right? So, after you stood up and you said that you want to run the meeting, the first thing we're going to do is a presidential preference poll. We're going to say, okay, everybody that likes Bernie Sanders, go stand on that side of the room together. Everybody that likes Hillary Clinton, go stand on that side of the room. There can be people there that night that want to be uncommitted to either candidate. I don't like those people. I don't like those people. At this point in the race, you need to be committed to someone, okay? So, but there will be a couple individuals in the room that will be like, I'm uncommitted. Everyone will break off into their preference group. Like I said earlier, in order to get any delegates out of this meeting, your preference group has to represent 15% or more of the entire room. So, what are we trying to do? Flood the meeting with Bernie Sanders people, get 86%, right? If that doesn't happen, that's okay. Just make sure that you have the majority of the room so that your people walk away with the most delegates, our Bernie Sanders people. After we've broken off into our preference groups, and say we didn't get 86%, say we evenly split in that one precinct, 50-50, and there's 2 delegates up for grabs, then the Hillary camp will get 1, and the Bernie camp will get 1. What then happens is that group of Bernie people, just by themselves, elect the person from their group that they want to be that delegate, while the Hillary people in their group do the exact same thing. You guys follow me? It's kind of a weird process. Now, all we're doing on March 1st, and this is all they did last night in Iowa, those 77 delegates that are up for grabs, not one of those individuals is going to be chosen on March 1st. And not one of the 42 delegates from Iowa was chosen last night. Because the caucus is the first step in this very long, drawn-out process. And this is why the caucus system benefits the establishment. Because the establishment is ready to participate in weeks of this long, drawn-out process, where most people like us that are new and just getting engaged for the first time and excited and green, once we find out, oh, wait, I gotta go to like 2 more meetings that are like really long and take up the whole day, I don't wanna do that. We gotta do that. And I'm sorry to say that. So that's all we're doing on caucus night. We're electing delegates from the precinct level, which means your neighborhood. They're going to go to the county convention, which will take place in 3 weeks from the caucus night. So when you stand up to be a delegate for Bernie Sanders on March 1st, please know you are standing up and you are committing an entire Saturday to go into a county convention so you can do this entire process all over again. Because that's what we're going to do at the county convention. We're going to meet in an auditorium like this, and then they're going to say, okay, everybody likes Bernie Sanders, go on that side of the room. Everybody likes Hillary Clinton, go on that side of the room. And we're going to do that whole thing again. And then we're going to elect delegates from the county to go to the state convention. And at the state convention, you guessed it, we do the whole thing all over again. So, Bernie Sanders' numbers and Barack Obama's numbers went up every single step of the way. And so when they tell you on the news, Bernie Sanders got half of the delegates from Iowa last night, please understand that this is the first step in a long, drawn-out process. By the time Iowa finally has its state convention in April or May, Bernie Sanders might walk out with 24 or 25, and Hillary Clinton might have a few less delegates. So don't think that these numbers on caucus day are locked in. They're not. And it could go the other way. Bernie Sanders could lose supporters too, but really, our supporters are gung-ho, and we're dug in, right? We're ready. So I don't think anybody from the Bernie camp is going to be switching sides anytime soon. So that's kind of caucus in a nutshell. After you do that presidential preference poll, you're going to do that same entire process for these lower tier candidates. You're going to do that process for the district attorney's office. You're going to do that process for the CU Regent's office. So we need Bernie Sanders supporters to actually stick around on caucus night and not just leave after they take the presidential preference poll. Because what we're trying to do is affect the Democratic Party for the long term. And so finally, after you do that whole process for the district attorney or the CU Regent or whatever race might be going on in your different county if you're not in Denver, the very last order of business they do is they elect precinct committee people. In every single precinct, there's 3,010 precincts in the entire state of Colorado. Every single precinct has 2 precinct committee people. These people are the most local officials of the Democratic Party. And this position is a very lowly position that doesn't mean anything. And again, just like at the beginning of that meeting, most people don't want to run the meeting. Most people don't want to be precinct committee people. And that's why currently you have thousands of precinct committee positions vacant all across the country. And if we look to the Tea Party again, we can see this is where they started their organizing, at the most local level of the Republican Party. And in 2008, they all went to their caucuses and they got all their people elected to these precinct committee positions all over the country. And that's what we need to do as Bernie Sanders people. If you're a Bernie Sanders supporter, you just became a delegate for him to go to the convention at the county level, also stand up and become a precinct committee person. Because for the next 2 years, until the next caucus is held, you're going to hold that position. And that position has very little responsibility. Every once in a while, the Democratic Party is going to put on an event, and they're going to ask you to go around your neighborhood and let people know about the event, or go around the neighborhood and canvass with the list of Democrats, just so you can update it, so we know if, Joe Schmo moved, or if this person passed away and isn't living anymore, we can take them off the rolls. That's your job. And it's a really minuscule job, and that's why most people don't want it. But in the aggregate, it has power. Say I live in HD2. My House district representative is this guy named Alec Garnett, who's awesome. Say Alec Garnett decided he wanted to just retire, or he got a promotion to the governor's office. Suddenly there's a vacancy in HD2. And instead of costing the taxpayers a bunch of money for a special election, the Democratic Party will convene what they call a vacancy committee. And they'll just pick all these different precinct committee people from that House district, and they'll put them in a room, and they'll say, you guys pick the person that's going to represent HD2 at the State House. This is what I'm talking about. This is where we, as a progressive grassroots movement, can actually have power. And can actually start to slowly chip away at what the billionaire class have set up by rigging the entire political process for their benefit. But it's going to take time. It's going to take effort. And time and effort isn't a lot of stuff that we have, right? So that's why it's awesome that this is a mass movement. Because if we have millions of people putting in a little bit of time here and there, then over time, we can actually accomplish a whole bunch. So, this is just the beginning. It's just the start, and I'm excited to see where this is going to go. But please don't get discouraged. Don't look at news reports. I've been telling people since August, let's stay focused on Colorado. Don't worry about New Hampshire next week. Don't worry about South Carolina. Don't worry about Nevada. Worry about your neighborhood. And if you guys all focus on just winning your neighborhood for Bernie Sanders, and if every single Bernie Sanders supporter throughout this country had that same mindset, then we're going to take this country back in an instant. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to end this, and I'm going to invite Jordan up here. Jordan, he is a paid staffer for the Bernie Sanders campaign here in Colorado. I'm just a volunteer, okay? I don't work for the campaign at all, but Jordan does. And Jordan is amazing. He's an amazing organizer, and he is a whole bunch of incredible volunteer organizers that are working underneath of him. And it's these people that can connect you with the tools that you need to turn your neighborhood out for Bernie Sanders. So Jordan, come on up here. Tell them what you guys got in store in terms of like events and what they can do. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you, everybody. Big round of applause for TC
course, and TC Robert setting this up. It's huge. We were doing grassroots organizing before the national campaign landed here. And we were so organized, the national campaign was like, wow, we don't need 20 to 30 people staffed here. We actually need 10. So we're a small staff in this entire state of Colorado, only about 14 of us. And I'm the field organizer for Denver, which is House Districts 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 8. But the way the national campaign strategy goes is within each House district, there is a House district captain, and they are in charge of overseeing all the volunteer activity within. So please get a hold of me if you need to know who that is, so that you can get on board and volunteer. We'll be coming up on a period of time that it's going to be our third and final phase here in Colorado, starting in about a week or two. It's called Get Out the Caucus. So this is a perfect event to talk about the caucus, because TC has been running these trainings for months, like they said, since July and June. I'm very proud to be born from that grassroots organizing from the past. So we're just developing volunteer leaders. We're getting people excited about burning anywhere we can. We talk about them, of course, and we're getting people to, get excited and feel the burn. So, are you guys feeling the burn out there? Guys, Iowa was huge. That was not just a, oh, it's a memorial victory for burning. It was a big victory for us. We were down by, 25 points in November in Iowa, and to be ahead or behind a few points going into that day, and then come out with pretty much splitting the delegates, and we have like a 20-plus point lead going into New Hampshire next Tuesday, we're going to take a lot of delegates out of New Hampshire. So, and then moving forward, people are going to be like, oh, look, Bernie's winning. So we're just going to continue this domino effect. And results like last night, they make states like Colorado even more important than ever. And the closer and closer that this race gets, Colorado becomes even more important. So we need to continue to work super hard to, like TC says, we're going to get that 120,000 people into the caucuses, where we are shooting for, a 75%, 80% win for Bernie, because Obama did it with 66%. So we can go above and beyond. Overall, we have had over 3 million individual contributions into the campaign. People like all of us here donating $20 to $30 a piece, of course. So, big round of applause to all of us for that. Like we all know, we're not taking that super PAC money. We're not taking the big oil, the big Wall Street money. We're all about, the people. This is a campaign, by the people. Bernie is part of, he grew up humble beginnings and everything. He, has a salary of $350,000, $400,000 a year, not $21 million. Excuse me, I'm getting cold starting today. Couple things I want to talk about. Tomorrow night in Denver at the Mercury Cafe, we're going to have some national campaign staff in town from 6:30 to 8:30, and we call it the Barnstorm. It's a big rally of volunteers. I have almost 200 people who signed up so far, and we're going to have some people speaking. We're going to get involved with our house districts. We're going to break out and we're going to talk within our house districts about what's going on. And then I have a live band coming down from Boulder who is donating their time. They're big Bernie supporters, and they actually spent some good money on making a song for Bernie, and we're going to hear that here in just a minute when I finish up. So that's huge, 6:30 to 8:30 tomorrow at the Mercury Cafe. You can look that up at berniesanders.com/events. Here in Colorado, we have about 250,000 phone calls to make, and we've only finished 40,000 of those. So we need to really get on the phone banking system each week on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then getting out to campus on Saturdays and Sundays. That is kind of the schedule that we run each week. And it's volunteers like you guys who've been helping us out so much. And I get on those phone calls in the evenings as well. I make like 95 calls in a couple of nights and help when I can as well. It's so important. So we're definitely in this fight. We're in this fight together because this campaign is about the greater whole. It's about all of us. It's not about Bernie. He says, not me, us. And that is exactly what this campaign is, of course. So So that's huge. We're going to continue to build that. The newest slogan for Bernie, of course, is a future to believe in, because he is the future. There's not another choice out there, I feel personally, that is going to get us there. And he's the one that we have to continue to push and get behind. So, like we are doing by being here tonight. So that's huge. So let's just continue pushing hard in the campaign, and I really appreciate you guys' time, and thank you for listening to me. We're going to go ahead and play that song now from the band. The band doesn't really have a name, but the guy named is Julian Yeats. They spent about $1,000 making this song. It's really well done. And if you need to get a hold of me, I'll be hanging out in the lobby. Please grab some Bernie swag, rubber stickers, things like that. And there's a couple of t-shirts and water bottles left as well. So, we're going to do a Q&A after the song too. So if you want to ask some questions for anybody in TC, please stick around. So thank you guys very much. Please get involved. We're going to help each other out, and it's going to be great. So thank you guys so much.
Start the music.
We do a weekly event at the Skylark Lounge every Wednesday at 6 p.m. that we've been doing since August. And what's so cool is watching the community form. I do this little thing and then I get off the stage and then people will stick around for an hour or 2 hours organizing, talking to each other, becoming the best friends in the world. And so that's actually how I met Jordan. Jordan came out to the Skylark Lounge for like 8 weeks straight, every single week, man. And I wasn't saying anything different. I was saying the same thing every time, and he kept showing up. like, you know, it's not about Jordan actually listening to what I'm saying on stage. Jordan's coming to connect with all these people that are coming every single week. And typically we'll have anywhere from maybe 20 people, 60 people. One time we had 150 people show up. So it can vary. And a lot of those people will be the same people in the room. A lot of times, half the room is new faces. But we tell them every single time, when you're done with these events, don't just get up and leave. Actually connect with each other. Because for this political revolution to succeed, like I said earlier, it has to be a sustainable grassroots movement. And for that to happen, we have to build a community. And so that's what this whole campaign is really about, is building a community of like-minded people. Maybe we don't see eye to eye on every single issue. That's okay. Because we can still come together and make America a better place to live for all of us. So, if you guys don't have any questions for me to answer, that's cool. But I highly recommend turning to the neighbor over here. Maybe they're not next to you because we've got a lot of space tonight, right? Introduce yourself to someone that you don't know tonight. Talk to them. Ask them why they're into Bernie Sanders. Tell them why you're into Bernie Sanders. See where they live, and it just might happen. You guys might be neighbors. You'd be like, hey, let's go to caucus together. I'll carpool you. So if there are no questions, then I want you guys to start mingling. If there are, come up here. There's a microphone up here, and everyone can hear your question. If not, I think you're good. What's your question?
So if my neighbor, if I'm standing next to my neighbor and I say, oh, you should caucus, and they're like, well, I don't even know if I'm a registered Democrat, I haven't voted in so long. You know, what's the process? What does that look like? And what resources can I offer them to figure it out? Because some people are just kind of lazy, they don't really, look into that kind of stuff. What should I tell them?
That's absolutely right. And it's also another thing we found where we'll tell people, hey, you have to be a Democrat by this date. And they'll be like, oh, I'm totally a Democrat. Then we tell them, you go to govotecolorado.com. Govotecolorado.com. It's the Secretary of State's website. And they have a little tab on there, a whole bunch of stuff. They have a thing on there that says find my registration. And all anybody has to do is enter their last name, their birth date, their zip code, and it will pull up their registration. And this is where I actually want everybody to go tonight. Because it's not just going to tell you whether you're registered as a Democrat or not. If you scroll down on the page, it's going to tell you all the pertinent information that you need for caucus. It's going to tell you the state house district that you live in, and it's going to tell you your precinct number. Please, when you see it, you're going to also see congressional district number. This is where it gets confusing. Your congressional district is the person that represents you in Washington, D.C. So I live in Denver, so I live in Congressional District 1, and that's Diamond again. But my House district is what's important here. I live in House District 2. So when you're looking up that information, make sure that you're looking at the one that says State House District, and then you're also going to see this really long 10-digit number that says your precinct number. Your precinct number is designed, it's really weird. It has all the information you need within that 10 digits. But what's most important are the last 3 of that long 10-digit string of numbers. So like I said earlier, I live in House District 2. My precinct number is 240. So I need to know that information so I can, 1, know which location I need to even show up at on caucus night, right? And then 2, once I'm at the caucus location, I know which room to actually go into. So everybody in this room, I highly, highly suggest either tonight or tomorrow morning, go into govotecolorado.com, finding your registration and finding all that information. And then sharing it with all your friends and family members. Any other questions?
Good answer.
Hey.
I actually don't have a question, I wanted to say something.
Okay.
One of the things I thought to do too is people get freaked out when you start talking to them about stuff, so I took a bunch of screenshots and I saved them. And when I went to talk to people, if they were like, I still don't understand, I like highlighted things and I'm like, can I have your email and I will send you this document. And it just had all the pages with, like I circled everything that they needed, like this is next, step 1, step 2, step 3.
Spelling it out.
And then they were like, oh, and then, because a lot of times people are like, oh, computer, what?
Right?
Especially for older people, so then it's just a document.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Good recommendation.
Yeah, making it easy for them. Yeah.
TC, can you kind of repeat that louder so that people over here can also hear?
Yeah, and so
Oh,
what
sorry.
she was just saying is what she likes to do is she takes screenshots of like the entire process from her phone or her computer, and so that way when she finds a friend or a family member that's kind of interested but reluctant to do all of this stuff themselves, she can easily just be like, okay, well, you're going to go to this website and you're going to see this on your screen, you're going to click on that, you're going to enter here, and then you'll be done. And then bam, it's that easy. So thank you. That's awesome. Any other questions? Even just comments. You got some comments? Somebody like Bernie Sanders want to share? Hey, how's it going?
Hi. Yeah, so my question is, I registered as a Democrat last summer,
Okay.
and it's the first time I've registered with a party, but I knew I wanted to be able to caucus. I didn't know what that was. And, but I moved, and every time I move, you know, it says, oh, register to vote. So I re-registered, so does that screw it up? Does that make my...
You're still going to be registered as a Democrat. Now, this is what's crucial is yesterday was the deadline to register at your current location. So if you are currently registered as a Democrat, you're still going to be able to caucus, but say you're registered at your last house that you lived at, you're going to have to caucus at that location. And there's nothing you can do now, because it's February 2nd, the deadline was yesterday, to be able to caucus at your most current location. But I highly suggest for you, since you've moved a few times, go to govotecolorado.com tonight, and it will tell you which address you're currently registered at. And hopefully, you're registered at the place you live at now, because it just makes it that much easier to actually go to the caucus, right? Any other questions? Sir?
If I'm talking to people about caucusing, what can I tell them to expect as far as a time commitment for the precinct caucus?
That's a good question. Expect an hour, most likely. An hour. This should not take more than an hour. Half an hour, just because of how much excitement's going into this year's election. I don't see these things being done in half an hour. So I would say commit yourself to be at the caucus from anywhere from 6:30 to probably 7:45, 8 o'clock at the latest. Any other questions? Yes, Jeff.
Comment. Oftentimes you find that after all the candidates are selected, other things happen, such as the party platform. And so that can go on for another half hour on its own. So one thing is we need to bring in already written out clearly our proposals for the party platform. And then, they will end up going to the different, committees up the ladder up to the state to form the party platform. But that is one of the places we get to contribute the most. Now, of course, it's somewhat placebo because they ignore us in the end. But if you look at the party platforms, like Denver, Colorado's 2006 platform looks very much like the Green Party. We have a say in that. The thing is that a lot of people have left, so you can really have a great effect on what the platform for the state and the national will look like.
Yeah, Jeff makes a great point. This isn't just about electing delegates to get Bernie Sanders elected as the president. We can have a lot of long-term effects on the party, not just the county parties, but also the state parties, and like Jeff said, the national party as a whole. Because after we do all that thing, the presidential preference polls for lower tier candidates, and then we select precinct committee people, they're also going to do stuff with regard to the Democratic platform. And this is how we can get our progressive values inserted directly into the platform. And like Jeff said, he said a lot of it's placebo, and they're all fine and good with letting that get on the platform, but then the politicians whose job it is to, legislate said platform, they just kind of ignore it. But platforms, fights, historically are actually really good places for insurgent campaigns to kind of flex their muscles and show that they have organizational power, especially when you get to the national convention. So I know I have a friend who's really motivated about the platform, and that's what he wants to do. He's less concerned about becoming a delegate and more concerned about writing really strong progressive planks for the Democratic platform for activists to kind of hold on to and then use to hold elected officials accountable to that platform. And so we need people like Jeff and like my buddy Imran and like you maybe, who are more into like technical writing, and maybe you're idealists and you have all these amazing ideas that you want to see implemented in the world. Get involved. I know the Democratic Party of Denver, every single week at their headquarters right off of South Broadway there at I-25, they have all of these policy committees, meetings, like once a week, and like each week will be like a different policy meeting committee. So like there'll be like an education committee, and then like a crime and safety committee. Go to those meetings, because when you show up to those meetings, you're gonna see there's 4 or 5 people there. And when my friend Kevin showed up with 4 or 5 other people that were Bernie Sanders supporters, they had half the room supporting Bernie Sanders. And one of the old guard Democrats told him, he said, after your guy loses, I hope you guys still come to these meetings. And my friend Kevin had to turn to him, he said, well, he won't, and we will. Don't worry. That's what we have to do. This is not just about electing Bernie Sanders. That's the fun part, that's the lightning rod that attracts all the energy and the enthusiasm. But really, we have to start showing up and dedicating some of our free time to go into some really boring meetings. But trust me, if we start dominating those meetings, we can turn them into really fun meetings, I guarantee. Any other questions, guys? Yeah, one more. She's got all the questions.
So I'm in the caucus room with my precinct, and it's the caucus night, and there's a lot of really undecided people because they don't know what they're doing, and they're just sort of standing in between Hillary and Bernie's groups, and they just don't know what to do. What's a good suggestion for leading or guiding those people to make up their mind? Like, I've been in caucuses where literally people are just like, I'm gonna pull you over to this side because you don't actually know what you're doing. And we don't want to do that.
Yeah,
we want to inform people so they can make a choice when they're there.
Yeah,
Which is one of the reasons they're going there, right?
I would say the best thing is just speak from your heart and talk about why you support Bernie Sanders and why you took the time to caucus for Bernie Sanders. A lot of people might show up with a certain issue that they're going to question you about. And it's okay if you don't know Bernie Sanders' stance on corn subsidies. It's totally fine. But I think if you are able to be passionate enough and speak from your heart, that's going to come through. That will really help. At the same time, what I don't want Bernie Sanders supporters being is coming into caucus night with a chip on their shoulder and kind of being confrontational. Because what we're going to find, and you saw it if you look at the demographic numbers from Iowa last night, the people who came out and supported Hillary Clinton are all old people. And so the last thing we want is some enthusiastic Bernie Sanders supporter like yelling and deriding some old person because they like Hillary Clinton. Because what that certainly won't do is convince that undecided voter to come hang out with that young enthusiastic person, right? And I actually had Jason over here. We talked about this. We talked about the fact that is going to turn a lot of people off if you're just standing there and it looks like all you do is yell at old ladies that like Hillary Clinton. That's not cool, bro. So I think it's going to be important, one, to kind of go in there, even if it's just like 2 minutes, 3 minutes of something that you can say from the heart, why you decided to support Bernie Sanders, why you decided to make this the first year that you ever caucused in your life. And if you can show that energy and that enthusiasm, that can rub off on people. And you know what? Over the last 7 months, I've learned that that's completely true. So go in there with something that you love about Bernie, be ready to stand up for him, and don't be mean. Please don't be mean. Hey, Jeff.
Along that line, one thing I learned a long time ago is never attack a person, attack the idea.
I like that.
Always never make it personal, but basically ask questions like, why do you want your job to be connected with your health care? Bernie supports single-payer health care. You have the freedom, you're not going to get stuck in a job because you're afraid of losing your health care. Be able to say these things in about no more than 2 minutes. Practice your elevator speech. Don't make it artificial. And then be ready for answering questions, but ask them questions rather than tell them.
That's awesome. I like that. anybody else has some questions? You got a question up there?
Yeah, so you suggested during the precinct meeting, people volunteer to be presider or to lead it. What would that entail, or for the secretary? What do you need to do for that?
It's awesome. It really doesn't entail much. It basically entails you to lead and instruct everybody in the meeting what the meeting's going to encompass. And what's awesome is the party is just going to basically write up a sheet for you that you'll just be able to read right off of. So, in order to preside over a meeting, all you have to do is be able to have good reading comprehension skills. And then repeat whatever they wrote on the piece of paper for you. In order to be the secretary for the meeting, we want you to have good handwriting, have some good handwriting, and then just be able to take all the official notes of the meetings, record a correct amount of people that went for each preference group, and that's it. And then the meeting's over, and then your job is done. You don't ever have to worry about doing that again until 2 more years from now.
There's a little bit of math involved.
Some math involved, that's right, because you're going to have to determine whether, like, the number, so let's just make it easy, right? Say 100 people show up for your precinct caucus, because that's probably going to happen. Last night in Iowa, I was looking at some of the numbers from some of those rooms, and it would be like 290 people for Bernie Sanders in the room, 293 people for Hillary Clinton, and then like 3 people for Mark O'Malley. So we could potentially see that same thing where you see like 500 people in one precinct caucus. Most likely you're gonna see like 100, 120 people. That's in like heavy Democratic areas like the city and county of Denver, Boulder. I have a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters come up to me and they're like, oh, I live in like a super red county. There's no reason for me to caucus. I shouldn't even go out there and canvass my neighborhood and try to bring people to caucus with me. And I try to tell them, I'm like, no. What did we just spend this whole hour talking about? We talked about the idea that because nobody participates in this process, the people who show up, their voices are amplified. So if you live in an area that's dominated by Republicans, you're actually Bernie Sanders' best hope. Because it's most likely there's no Democrats in your neighborhood that are even going to show up to caucus. So if you can go out of your way to bring 4 or 5 Democrats that are all for Bernie Sanders, and it's just you 4 or 5 people sitting around a table, your caucus is going to be super easy. Super easy. And I can only say that from experience because as a Republican in Denver County, that's how you caucus as a Republican. All I had to do was bring my mom and my wife with me, and then we were the caucus. And then I got to name myself the precinct committee person. I got to be the delegate. My wife got to be the other delegate. Okay, meeting's over. Right? So if you run into your friends and family members that are like, I live in Jeffco and it's all run by Republicans, there's no point. Give them that spiel that I just gave you. Okay? Any other questions? Hey!
So you said that when people go, they say, I'm for Bernie, or I'm for Hillary, and then once they're in those groups, someone tries, maybe tries to convince their group, I should be your delegate.
Yep.
What's to prevent someone who's for Hillary to pretending they're for Bernie and then becoming the delegate?
Absolutely nothing! And you just hit the nail on the head. Because this is why it's crucial that we do canvas work. Because while we're canvassing our neighborhoods, we're identifying support. And so we're marking in our pieces of paper or on our phone, because you can download this awesome app called Minivan where you do all of the work right on your phone. And so when you walk up to a door and Joe Schmo tells me how he's ready for Hillary Clinton, I mark that in my phone. I mark him as a 5 for Hillary Clinton support. That information goes to the Bernie Sanders campaign. And hopefully the campaign is going to be able, what they're looking for is they're looking for people in every single precinct. We have 3,010 precincts in the entire state of Colorado. So we're looking for 3,010 volunteers that want to stand up and basically be like the person that's responsible for winning their precinct for Bernie Sanders on March 1st. And so you're most likely going to be that person out there canvassing your neighborhood, finding other people to come to the caucus with you. But while you're canvassing your neighborhood, you're identifying the people who don't support Bernie. So that on caucus night, you can show up, and when Nancy Green walks over into the Bernie group, you can call her out in front of the entire group of people, and you can be like, Nancy, that's awesome, you want to caucus for Bernie, because 3 days ago when I knocked on your door, you told me how much you were ready for Hillary Clinton. And then everyone can look at Nancy and be like, okay, because this is what it comes down to. So Nancy can come over and give Bernie the support, so Bernie gets to 86%, right? But then, after we got Bernie Sanders, that 86%, call her out so that she can't get elected as a delegate from your group. Do you see what I'm saying? Let her come over and give us the support we need to win. But then when she's there, be like, oh yeah, you don't get to be the delegate because we know your game, Nancy Griffin. But you're absolutely right. There's nothing stopping people. And if the Hillary Clinton camp is smart, if they are smart, Hillary Clinton agents in the room, where are you at? If you guys are smart, what you're going to do is you're going to read the tea leaves and you're going to realize that you're going to lose Colorado. They already know they're going to lose. So if they're really smart, they're going to start telling their people to just go and preference for Bernie. But once they preference for Bernie, they're going to tell their people to stand up and become the delegate for Bernie, so that at the county convention, 3 weeks later, they can switch their preference for Hillary Clinton. And then our numbers go down, their numbers go up. So that was an excellent, best question of the night. Thank you so much. Jeff?
To continue with that, when Mike Miles ran against Ken Salazar, there was a little bit of response from Mike at the caucuses. But then when we had the county convention, there are all these people Salazar signs around. Mike Miles got up and spoke. Almost everybody who surrounded me switched. So their delegates for Salazar switched to Mike Miles right there, and Mike Miles blew Salazar away as far as the votes at the conventions.
That's
and
awesome.
got on the ballot first. So remember, things can change. So being a delegate is very important.
Very important to be a delegate. If you plan on being a delegate that goes to Philadelphia to the National Convention, there might be some of you in this room that think that you can make it through this entire process and that you want to go to Philadelphia for Bernie Sanders next summer. That's awesome. And we need people, because we're going to need 77 delegates, because we're going to get all of them, right? So the thing about the Democratic Party is in 1968, they changed all their rules that govern this entire process. And that's what makes this process as fair as it is now. One of those rules that they changed is that the delegates that go and represent Colorado to the Democratic National Committee next summer, there is affirmative action that applies to those delegations. So the delegation has to be split 50-50 between men and women. It also has percentages that you need to have representing African American voters, Pacific Islander and Asian American voters, Hispanic American voters, the GLBT community, the handicapped community, and young people, which are considered 18 to 35. So if you fit into one of those categories, or maybe multiple of those categories, then you are an ideal person to be a candidate, to be a delegate for Bernie Sanders at the National Convention next summer. So if you're one of those people, please highly consider doing that. And what you'll need to do is you have to go to the Colorado Democratic Party's website, and there's this form that you can print off that basically says that you're declaring yourself to be eligible to be a delegate to the National Convention. You have to print that form off and send it into their office by March 17th. Otherwise, you won't be eligible to go to Philadelphia. And don't worry about covering costs to get to Philadelphia, because the county parties are awesome. They're all run by volunteers. All their money is volunteer money. And they raise money all year long so that they can send people to the National Convention. So if something like finances are a hindrance for you, but you think you'd be a great person to go to Philadelphia and represent Bernie Sanders, don't let the finances hinder you, because the party will pay your way to get there. Any other questions? All right, we're going to call it a night. man. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Talk to each other. Thank you. There's some big events going on for Bernie in terms of like national campaign staff is here in the state this week. So go to the berniesanders.com/events page, type in your zip code, and you can find all sorts of official events, and then canvassing events, phone banking events. We need all the help we can get right now, guys. Thank you so much.